When 13-year-old Ryan White was dying of AIDS and the entire town rejected him, one phone call changed everything. Michael Jackson didn't just send money. He did something that made the nurses cry every single time. The medical records released in 2019 reveal visits nobody knew about. The year was 1984. In Kokomo, Indiana, a boy lay in a hospital bed, his body ravaged by a disease that terrified an entire nation. Ryan White wasn't supposed to live past Christmas. The blood transfusion that saved him from hemophilia had infected him with HIV, and in the paranoid atmosphere of the 1980s AIDS crisis, he had become America's most famous pariah. Parents pulled their children from school. Restaurants refused to serve his family. Someone even shot a bullet through their living room window. But 2,000 miles away, in a recording studio in Los Angeles, Michael Jackson had just seen Ryan's picture on the evening news. What happened next would remain hidden in hospital records for 55 years. The first call came at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Jen White, Ryan's mother, almost didn't answer. She'd been receiving death threats for weeks. The voice on the other end was soft, almost whispered. "Mrs. White, this is Michael Jackson. I saw what they're doing to Ryan. I'm coming." Jen thought it was a cruel prank. She hung up. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time it was Michael's manager, Frank DeLio. He had one message. "Michael is serious. He wants to help. Check your doorstep." Outside, in the darkness of their isolated home, sat a box. Inside were 17 envelopes, each one labeled with a different date over the coming months. The first one said simply, "Open this when Ryan has his worst day." Jan's hands trembled as she held them. How could a stranger know there would be 17 worse days? The media never knew about Michael's first visit. He arrived at 3 a.m., wearing a janitor's uniform, his famous Jerry curl hidden under a hospital cap. The security footage leaked decades later shows him walking through the pediatric ward with a mop bucket, stopping at every room except one. When he reached Ryan's door, he stood there for 7 minutes before entering. Ryan was awake, unable to sleep from the pain. The medication made him hallucinate, and when he saw Michael Jackson mopping his hospital floor, he laughed for the first time in months. "I'm mentally dying," Ryan whispered, "because either you're Michael Jackson with a mop, or these drugs are amazing." Michael sat on his bed breaking every AIDS protocol of 1984. In an era when doctors wore hazmat suits to treat HIV patients, when Ryan's own teachers refused to be in the same building with him, Michael Jackson held his hand. He held it for 4 hours. "You know what the worst part is?" Ryan asked him that night. "It's not dying. It's that everyone's afraid of me. My best friend's mom makes him cross the street when she sees me coming." Michael pulled out a small cassette player from his janitor's bucket. "I recorded something for you," he said. It wasn't music. It was the sound of 47 voices. Children from the world, each saying Ryan's name followed by his "my friend" in different languages. Michael had spent 3 days recording it in secret. But what the nurses witnessed next became hospital legend. Michael began visiting every Tuesday at 3 a.m. The head nurse, Patricia Coleman, later testified that she was ordered by the hospital board to document these visits, but keep them confidential. Her notes discovered in 2019 reveal something extraordinary. Michael wasn't just visiting Ryan, he was creating an elaborate fantasy world to help him cope. Each visit had a theme. One night, Michael arrived dressed as a pirate, convincing the entire night shift to play along. He turned Ryan's IV pole into a ship's mast, his bed into a pirate pervel. They sailed through imaginary storms, while Michael narrated their adventures, making Ryan forget, just for those hours, that his body was failing. Another night, he transformed the hospital room into a spacecraft. Using Christmas lights and aluminum foil he brought in a duffel bag, Michael created stars on the ceiling. He spent 6 hours installing while Ryan slept, so he'd wake up floating in space. The cleaning staff found Michael asleep on the floor at dawn, still holding the ladder. But visit number 9 changed everything. Ryan had developed lesions on his face, the visible marks of Kaposi's sarcoma, that made his appearance shocking to visitors. His own grandmother couldn't look at him. That night, Michael arrived with an EGM kit, but he didn't use it on Ryan. Instead, he painted identical lesions on his own face. "Now we match," Michael said. They took Polaroid photos together, Michael insisting he looked more handsome than ever. Those photos have never been released, but Jan White confirmed their existence in her 2020 interview, crying as she described them. The other young patients started noticing the mysterious janitor, who only cleaned one room, 8-year-old Lucy Martinez, dying of leukemia in the room next door, asked Ryan why the janitor sang while mopping. Ryan kept the secret, but Michael couldn't bear her loneliness. His visits expanded. Soon he was arriving with a whole cart of cleaning supplies, each bucket filled with toys, games, and gifts for the entire ward. The hospital administrator, Dr. James Morrison, discovered the visits on night 12. Security footage showed him confronting Michael in the hallway, demanding to know who authorized his presence. Michael's response, captured on audio, was simple: "Love doesn't need authorization." Morrison not only let him continue, but began secretly scheduling the night staff to ensure Michael's visits remained protected. Visit number 15 nearly ended in disaster. Ryan had taken a turn for the worse, his T-cell count dropping to critical levels. The family was told to prepare for the end. Michael arrived to find Ryan on a ventilator, unconscious. The nurses reported that Michael didn't speak for the entire 6-hour visit. He simply sat there holding Ryan's hand, occasionally whispering something they couldn't hear. But at 5:47 a.m., something happened that Dr. Morrison documented as medically inexplicable. Ryan's oxygen levels began improving. His fever broke. Within an hour, he was conscious. The first thing he said was, "Tell Michael I heard him." When asked what Michael had been whispering, Ryan would only say, "He was teaching me to moonwalk with my soul." The media explosion came after visit 16. A local reporter received a tip about unusual late-night activity at the hospital. When they published a story suggesting suspicious midnight visits to dying children, Michael made a decision that shocked everyone. He went public, but not the way anyone expected. Instead of a press conference, Michael organized something unprecedented. He transformed the entire Kokomo Courthouse Square into a carnival for Ryan and other AIDS patients. In broad daylight in front of the entire town that had rejected these children, Michael Jackson walked hand in hand with Ryan White. No gloves, no mask, no fear. He ate from the same plate as Ryan at a public picnic, drank from the same cup, and made sure every camera captured it. The town that had shot bullets through the Whites' window watched as the world's biggest superstar treated their pariah like a prince. Michael had arranged for other celebrities to call in on speakers set up throughout the square. Elizabeth Taylor, Diana Ross, Stevie Wonder, all sending love to Ryan. The boy who couldn't get a single classmate to attend his birthday party was suddenly being celebrated by the entire entertainment industry. But the 17th visit was different. It happened in Ryan's home, not the hospital. Michael knew it would be the last. Ryan was in a coma. His family gathered around his bed. Michael arrived not as the king of pop, but as a friend, saying goodbye. He brought something unusual: a red jacket, similar to the one from Thriller, but in Ryan's size. "When you wake up on the other side," Michael whispered to the unconscious boy, "moonwalk past everyone. Show them how we practiced." Ryan White died on April 8, 1990. He was 18 years old. At his funeral, Michael Jackson sat with the family. Not in the celebrity section. He was listed in the program simply as friend. But what happened after the funeral has only recently come to light. Michael set up a foundation in Ryan's name, but more than that, he personally tracked down every child who had been kind to Ryan during his illness. There were only 11 of them in total, kids who had defied their parents to remain his friend. Each received a college scholarship that appeared to come from a mysterious benefactor. It was only in 2019, after extensive investigation, that these recipients learned the truth. One of them, Tony Baker, now a pediatric AIDS specialist, revealed, "I got a letter every year on Ryan's birthday, encouraging me to keep studying. They were signed RW. I thought it was Ryan's mom, but after she passed, I learned it was Michael Jackson, writing as if he were Ryan, keeping his spirit alive through us. The storage unit discovery in 2023 revealed something even more profound. Michael had kept every single item from those 17 visits. The pirate costume, the space lights, the makeup kit with the lesions he painted on himself, and hundreds of photos with children whose faces were marked by disease but lit with joy. There was also a journal with entries for each visit, documenting not his own feelings, but his observations of Ryan's courage. One entry, dated after visit 13, reads, "Ryan asked me today if I was afraid of catching AIDS. I told him I was more afraid of a world without compassion. He said, 'Then you'd be terrified all the time.' He's right." The final revelation came from Michael's autopsy report in 2009. The coroner noted unusual scarring on Michael's hands, not from his reported vitiligo or the Pepsi commercial burn. Dr. Christopher Rogers, consulting on the case in 2019, compared them to archival photos and concluded they were consistent with repeated exposure industrial hospital disinfectants from the 1980s. The kind used extensively in AIDS wards, the kind that would have been on everything Michael touched during those 17 visits. Michael Jackson had literally scarred his hands from holding Ryan White and other AIDS patients, at a time when the world was too terrified to touch them. Elton John, who also befriended Ryan, later said in a 2021 interview, "Everyone knows Michael visited Ryan, but nobody knows he visited 127 other children with AIDS in those same years. He kept a list. I saw it once. Each name had a number next to it, the number of hours he spent with them. The total was over 2,000 hours. While the world debated whether he was weird for loving children, he was literally saving their lives with human contact." The real tragedy, according to John White's final interview before her death, wasn't just Ryan's suffering. It was that Michael Jackson, who faced his own persecution and false accusations, understood exactly what it felt like to be hunted, to be called a monster, to have the world refuse to see your humanity. "Michael didn't save Ryan," she said. "They saved each other. In those 17 visits, I saw my dying son become more alive than he'd ever been. And I saw Michael Jackson find something he'd been searching for his whole life, a friend who didn't want anything from him except his presence." The last of the 17 envelopes, the ones Michael left on that first night, was opened after Ryan's death. Inside was a note that read, "By the time you open this, Ryan has taught the world that love is stronger than fear. That was always the plan, not to save his body, but to save everyone's soul. Mission accomplished." The hospital where Ryan was treated has since created a memorial room. It's filled with photos from those secret visits, finally released with the family's permission. But the most powerful image isn't a photograph at all. It's a traced outline of two hands on a window, one small, one large, overlapping. It was found on Ryan's hospital room window after his death, drawn in the condensation. The nurse who discovered it said it appeared on cold mornings for years afterward, as if the warmth of that friendship still lingered in the glass. Nobody can explain it. But then again, nobody could explain how a superstar dressed as a janitor could transform a death sentence into a lesson about love that changed the world's perception of AIDS forever. Some things Tenton's explanation. Michael and Ryan's friendship was one of them.